Welcome, everybody, to our wonderful event where we get to honor this year's Elizabeth Alexander Creative Writing Award winner for poetry, Winniebell Xinyu Zong, who is visiting with us for a week. Actually, this is the tail end of her visit. Before I introduce Winniebell, though, I'll just say a little bit about who we are. My name is Janetta Candelario, and I am the editor of the journal that hosts that award, sponsors that award, and hosts our visitor for a week. I am also a faculty member in sociology and Latin American Latino studies here at Smith. The journal Meridians was founded here at Smith 25 years ago this fall. In fact, we will be celebrating our 25th anniversary in October here on campus. We're super excited about that. And we've been doing a variety of activities leading up to that event, including one this May during commencement weekend, also Reunion 1, where we're going to be honoring and showcasing 25 Smith alumni authors who have published in the journal Meridians. So if you don't already belong to our multiple social media and newsletter listservs, please do consider signing up for that so you'll get more information about that. I want to also thank the folks who've been our co-sponsors for this particular event and visit, beginning with the Lecture Fund, which did sponsor some part of the cost for Winniebell's travel and visit with us. So we're very grateful to our Smith College colleagues for that. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, the East Asian Languages and Culture program here at Smith, which is also hosting the closing event of Winniebell's visit, which is a luncheon tomorrow at 22 Green Street, where Meridians is located. So thank you to my colleagues in EALC. I want to thank Ali Einbinder, who's our administrative manager at Meridians and is the power behind the throne in many ways and really the kind of anchor for the journal, takes care of everything. With the able assistance of 6 fabulous Meridians student interns, I think all of whom are here. We have 2 Stride Fellows, Isabella Grijalva and Virginia Cornett, who are not going to be with us after this year because they finished their term, but who have done incredible and wonderful supportive work, as well as 4 Quigley Fellows, Kyla Butler, who's also graduating this year, and Shin Young Sun, who's our other graduating senior, and then Renal Duban and Lynn Tran, who have been just incredible support and allies for everything that the journal does and will be incredibly difficult to replace. So thank you all. We also want to thank the Poetry Center for being our long-term partners in this project of bringing poets to campus as Meridians sponsored presenters and scholars and writers. And finally, I want to thank the Creative Writing Advisory Board for the journal, which is the body that juries this prize and is a very able group of faculty scholars from not only Smith, but also the 5 colleges, as well as former winners of the journal's prize for poetry and for prose. So thank you to those colleagues. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our honored guest, Winniebell Xinyu Zong, who uses she, they pronouns, and is a Chinese poet and chapbook editor at Newfound Press. Their poems have appeared or are forthcoming in Poetry, Poetry Daily, the Kenyon Review, the Margins, and in a week or 2, Meridians as well. We were hoping to have this spring's issue out already, but had an unexpected production delay. But do keep an eye out for it because you'll see the poem that won this award will be featured in that spring issue. Winniebell has also been nominated for the Pushcart Prize, Best New Poets, Best of Net, and the Association of Writers and Poets Intro Journals Project. She is the winner of this year's, as I said, Elizabeth Alexander Creative Writing Award for Poetry and the Mellon Fellowship for the Urban Justice Lab. She's also taught creative writing as a lecturer at Cornell University, where she received her MFA. They currently serve as the 24-25 J.C. and Ruth Hall's Poetry Fellow at the Wisconsin Institute for Creative Writing in Madison, Wisconsin, and came all that way to join us this week. So I'm glad that the weather is offering a warm welcome. Please join me as well in welcoming Winniebell.
A passage. Below deck, America anoints a thumbful of saltpeter, sulfur, and charcoal on my forehead. So you get used to my scent, he says. He marks me, a lover. I see, arriving port, America unlids a barrel of oil. The barrel I made by hand, the oil, like me, my lover, ordered by ship. After you, he says, such a gentleman, and I climb into my new body, overflowing, fleeing America to lick the shore, a respectable bride, prize anywhere. Barrel, oil, hope. He pits my head under the current and closes the lid. Unveil yourself again when you plunge above them all, he says. Maybe I will. In the barrel, won't you be a tackle bottoming our well, losing your tail, growing limbs fit for dissection by America's legitimate children? In the barrel, won't you breathe, eat, think, fuck, vomit, oil your face clean as grime under fingernail, polish boots with thumbful of gunpowder traveling through your system every 4 years? By yours, I mean why? Ours will never be yours. In the barrel, the moon loads a total eclipse at the muzzle of the well, and isn't that amazing? Here, there is no war. Who'd invade this land? Darkness, eternal. You hug your knees, and thus pit guts against guts, your sternum. A bruising border, catch yourself from asking why. Fight over territory, only to destroy my lover. One day, reports a heroic act by the shore. America, a good Samaritan, saves a drowning immigrant, douses her in dawn. I congratulate my lover on his newest publication. Oh, shucks, America says. Look who's ready to take the test. He slides a gun, well-oiled, down my forehead, my breasts, my palms. The gun is so heavy, I can't raise my arms. Oh God, I say, I have death on my hands. America glares at me, disgusted. Don't utter my other name in weakness, he says, with a voice sweet as money. He asks me to pull the trigger, and I do. But at whom? America, 2 wings in form of hearts in the rattle, toward 2 parallel direction. You will end together. I knew I was. My rights of you? No. Why? I exist. You wanted to deserve it. And I, butterfly, broken in sight, shaking of palms, gods, bridges, the same, but never up. I thought, which wing? The odds, at the end. The poem should. The poem must. And me? America and I, 2 butterfly wings broken in form, in sight. Of palms, shaking in the rattle of hearts toward gods. 2 bridges parallel, the same direction, but you will never end up together. I thought I knew which wing I was. The odds, my rights. At the end of the poem, you should know why the poem I must exist. And you wanted me to deserve it? Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. It's my first time in Smith, and I hope it will not be my last because there's adorable people here. And thank you so much for Meridians for this opportunity, especially to Janetta and Ali for your help throughout this process. Thank you for the advisory board for choosing my work, and that's why I'm here, and the fabulous interns who picked me from the sludge pile. And thank you especially to Xinyan and Ali for the adorable poster out there. Did y'all see me? I look good. But yeah, I'm gonna read a little bit of poetry and then a little bit of prose. I've never read prose in public before, so if I choke, help me out. I am going to start with the poem that will be published at Meridian soon, called March 13th, 2022, Translations of Ba's Recipe for COVID Prevention. And I wrote this poem because my Ba sent me a recipe that will prevent COVID during the pandemic. And he didn't give any other context. I have never made the recipe. But I was also wondering about what he would say if he knew that he could say anything through WeChat and it will not be read by anybody else. So this is a commentary kind of on the censorship. And I want to note that even though censorship in China is heavy and I'm mostly commenting on that, we face the same censorship here in the US as well. So this is a contrapuntal poem, and I'm going to read one stanza at a time and then bounce between them. One potato, one root of red carrot, half root of white carrot, 4 old leaves, a round white cabbage. Daughter, Mama was woken by residence committee. At 5 a.m., we vied for the least desirable. Add ingredients into a big pot with water. Set on high heat until boiling. Then boil on low for 30 minutes. Drain ingredients. Keep broth. Cabbage in lockdown. Kindergartens tested every child. Mama rushed Didi home. By noon, testing. Our city shut down. Can Baba post? In broth, add 15 black wood ear petals. A quarter block of white wood ear. Rinse in cold water. Don't rehydrate before throwing into pot. Boil on low for 30 minutes. Eulalos pickles, daughter, a contaminated man, returned to our block. Now Iron Silk welded his doors shut. Could we deserve a home, a border without a past testing? Take 100 gram, chordate, hutinia, otherwise known as snap ear root, fish mint, lizard tail, chameleon plant, heartleaf, fishwort, or bishopsweed. Rinse clean 2 big apples or 3 small apples. Cut them into chunks. Add to a pot. Bring to a boil on high heat, then boil on low for 15 minutes. Testing, we spread in groups, chats, records of 11 positives, names, jobs, ages, who they saw, where they went, at what time, for how long. Shame, we said. Villages, dug trenches until they were islands. We barricaded nice roads. On both ends, her country's bullhorn cleared its throat. Way, testing, all personnel, drink as soon as the work is done. You must ladle broth into a big bowl. Mellow the temperature until you can gulp in mouthfuls while standing. Fill up on broth until it reaches your transverse colon. You will feel a warm sensation on the left side of your belly button when it does. Be static. Stay at home. Be static. Stay where you are. Be static. Remain at your post. Be static. Airports, seaports, static. Trains, highways, shame, we said. Baba City feared Mama City. On the streets, a marching rampant, white PPT bodies spraying Ba-Si disinfectant as if sweeping mines, hospitals, depleted prenatal care, sun up to sundown, a long dragon. Boil this broth daily. Drink 1 bowl every morning after awakening. Wait for it to settle in you before breakfast. It's okay to drink it throughout the day. When the sun is still up, it won't cause high blood sugar. Eat the boiled apples and potatoes during breakfast. You can use the rest for stir fry. Boil this broth. It will prevent and treat cold or fever. It will fend off the invasion of the COVID-19 virus. of negatives, testing, testing. One city, one positive case, 8 million tested daily for 7 days, 1 billion annual national tax money. Tell me why our city hadn't paid workers for 2 years. Village children are growing bones from oilless noodles. Daughter, if Baba falls, let Baba wade across unbarred wheat fields to die. Toward home, daughter, can Baba post? Testing, testing, we're stranded. Mama's tomatoes are dying. On the streets, the party yells our names. Go home, now. So the contrapuntal form is something that I've been exploring a lot in my collection. And I think one thing is because, of the intersectionality nature of the contrapuntal form, which is a form of poetry that has 2 columns, and you read it from one side and then the other, but you can also read it across. And that nature is trans and queer. And that nature is also me as a survivor thinking about how to tell my story when this is what I feel brave enough to tell right now. But this might be what I feel brave enough to tell later if it is disguised somewhat. So it allows me to tell the truth when I don't feel like I'm there yet. It allows multiple facets of truth to be true at the same time. For the next piece, I'm going to invite one of the Smithies to collaborate with me on the stage. And Sun Xinyang, would you like to come up? We are going to have a contrapuntal reading together for one poem. Ready? Boutelle. Yeah. And we did not rehearse beforehand. I kind of bullied her into it.
No, I'm honored to do it.
So we're gonna see how it goes, and this is improv. You ready?
Hobbiter's visit, fourth trauma-versary. Second night. Steve plugged to an electric clock. The clock, clicked down his last 3 breath. Breath 3 reeked of wrongs. Oak drove alone, laying in a puddle of brimstone. A flame. Breath 2 I drew from Steve's palm. His hand shaking, mind static. Breath 1 wrong arrived, commanding the clock to save a sinner. Turn back, honey. Wrong unwounded me. Steve was sorry. What else do you need? This reunion, my therapist, my ex, who believed him. I pulled the plugs off me. It is finished, I said. At them, I shot, shrift, and cashed. I ran away, raped door after door in the courtyard. Wired walls of a platoon. I did not have a rifle.
2. First night. I killed 2 men. The first wore a tailed hoodie and a bulging backpack. Inside his backpack, sulfur and cologne. With a rifle, he fired on the crowded bus. The bus bled blue. Its woman, wailing, reeked of honey and hot breath. I drew him onto the pavement. I straddled his chest. Around his neck, my hands clicking till his grew static. His lover found, body in a puddle. I'm sorry, I sobbed. What else could I do? The lover knelt with me, his palm cradle for my skull, his heaving breath cloven to my ear. I'm sorry too. Then hurried a knife into the soft ravines of my ribs. I left the rifle. I kept the knife.
Second night.
First night.
Steve plugged to
I killed 2 men.
an electric clock.
The first wore a
The clock clicked
tailed hoodie and a
down his last 3.
bulging backpack.
Breath 3.
Inside his backpack,
Reeked of wrongs.
sulfur and cologne.
Oak drove alone, laying
With a rifle, he fired
in a puddle of brimstone.
on the crowded bus.
A flame. Breath 2 I drew.
The bus bled blue.
From Steve's palm, his hand,
Its woman, wailing,
shaking, mind static.
reeked of honey and hot
Breath 1 wrong arrived.
breath. I drew him
commanding the clock.
Onto the pavement.
To save a sinner, turn back.
I straddled his chest.
Honey, wrong would unwounded me.
Around his neck, my hands.
Steve was sorry. What else?
Clicking till his grew static.
Do you need this?
His lover found.
Reunion, my rapist.
Body in a puddle.
And my ex who believed.
I'm sorry, I sobbed. What else?
Him, I put the plugs.
Could I do?
Off me.
The lover knelt.
Off me. It's finished.
With me, his palm.
I said. At them I shot.
Cradle for my skull.
Stripped in caches.
His heaving breath, cloven.
I ran away, wrapped.
To my ear, I'm sorry too.
Door after door.
Then hurried a knife into.
In the courtyard.
The soft ravines of my ribs.
Wired walls and the platoon.
I left the rifle.
I did not have a rifle.
I kept the knife.
Yeah.
Xinyu is so kind. She actually pronounced rapist as therapist the first time. I was like, wow, that is so cute. Thank you so much. Because I do not want to leave that looming over our heads too much, this is me. It's about, I revise a lot, and this is about a 17th draft of a poem that I have here. And at first, you know, when I was fresh out of that trauma and like getting used to this new identity called survivor, I was wearing that with a lot of pride and a lot of feeling, you know, how will I ever climb out of there? So my poem actually sounded, you know, understandably really sad and really feeling like low and powerless. But I've gained power over the years, and this is the draft, and that represents where I am now. It's called In the End, You'll All Get Caught, to the rapist Steve and his best friend Ron. Again, you dream of peeling me off the grass, squint as you weigh me between your fingers, you, a merciful master who wouldn't touch a finger and crush a shell today. But he can. Your dentures flash in arousal as if you owned me, as if you discovered me in dirt, saved a pearl from my own home, how you try to smother me with lies, for the story to tell the next me that life did a disservice to you, a hopeless romantic, who salvaged all he could, the same remains of something itchy. No, rather, picture me descend upon your heathen land like fire across your beach-burned chest, my hands pulling your long trail to redemption to shreds. Watch me repel the muck of you, shame I put between your legs. Cute how your victim tears want justice, 'cause look, my flesh will forever soil the back of your shoe, stain the good name on your resume, and march from your bed sheets to the streets. When I wake, it's never too late. You fear the slowly but surely, mucus glued to your window, a web of trial. Oh, honey, I will be the reason you are remembered. Here is a piece that is for my ma. We have a relationship that grows like any relationship grows, through a little turbulence most of the times and sometimes peaceful. Every single one of my family members are in China, and I came to the US when I was 18. So most of the times in my adulthood, when I feel like I've found myself, we have spent it apart, and sometimes that takes a toll on both of us. And this one is called If the Soup Were Warm, and it's dedicated to my mother. At 6, I leapt on the floorboard of your blue-gray Vespa, belly restless, turning your soup into sweetness for my bones. Yuzi, where Mama live? Where will Mama live when baby grows up? You ask me, your only baby. Mama in Mama's house, baby in baby's, I said, beaming. You straddled behind me, knees pinching my pelvis, and steered our way through the city's boiling traffic. Baby always has a room in Mama's house. Does baby give Mama the same? With you, I bargained, a fledgling flapping wings in a city where filial children don't leave well, spring far. Okay, I declared over the exhaust, sporadic coughs. We may be neighbors when I have my own family. By the zebra stripes, you let the throttle recoil under your grip. Rest your chin on the crown of my head. Between the pigtails you tied too tight. If we become neighbors, can we be so close? Your door faces mine? 18 years later, near a swimming pool turned lotus pond, you and I share a basin of crawfish, each building a mountain with cracked armors. Between us, your new baby sat by his screen. Incense coils against gnats around our ankles. A peppercorn flees down my sheer blouse. We squat sit, peel shells, let chili oil numb our tongues. I am full. You persist, busy the chopsticks in the remains, and you ask again. 雨子, if Ma boils soup and want to bring you a bowl, can Ma find you before soup turns cold? I pick off a rice grain stuck on your chin. And here is the last poem that I'm going to read, and it is because, poetry can often be so much about trauma, and I want to recenter poetry on the audience in front of us, on the agency that we have as authors. One person said, I think recently it was posted on Paris Review, how wonderful creative writing is because you can kill your enemy in fiction before they really die and go to hell. So this is a poem called Tell 'em, and it's after my mentor, Larry Van Cleef Stefanen. And it begins with a quote by Lucille Clifton. Listen, you are beyond even your own understanding. You, my love, are what poetry is made of and for. Your existence once an impossibility in their eyes. So say no, generously, the terribleness, what was futile before you emerged shimmering, the thing they called privilege and thus not yours. Fuck all that. Fuck the ineffable. Say hell, no, and take the house down. Don't you see? The world in your hands, your vision into being. Tell them all that would have never been if you did not find it beautiful. Tell them no. Tell them to wait for a miracle in the shape of you. I am going to take a water break and I'm gonna read a little bit of prose, which I'm terrified about, to you all. But excuse me 1 second. Thank you. I have never read to an audience in which I don't see a lot of dicks. So this is really nice. So I'm working on a novel. And I am what somebody would say in the literary world, a recovering poet. We mostly say goodbye to poetry and move on to prose like this. And this novel I have is based in both North Korea and China. And my province is a little bit short boat ride away from North Korea and South Korea. So I grew up hearing a lot of stories. My grandmother actually hosted a platoon of volunteer army that went to fight in North Korea in the 50s. My gosh, don't quote me, in the 50s. And she happened to have a pretty legendary life. She was actually one of the last bloods of the Qing imperial family. So her mother was a gege, a princess that was married into Shandong province where my great grandfather was from Beijing on the Jiaozi little sedan. So I'm trying to tell their stories through a fiction. But this chapter actually is the first chapter of the novel that happens in North Korea. And this is in the 90s. A little bit of what you need to know by this point of the story. We have Kang-soo, who is the main character, and he's a 11-year-old boy. And they are kind of starving. They are near the Tumong kind of border area. And this is during the arduous march, which is a very long time of famine that was experiencing in North Korea. And his Oma has no choice but to drop him off at an orphanage because she cannot feed him. Kang-soo, stay alive, Oma said. I will come back when I find rice in a man's house. I nodded. Oma had made up her mind. She would cross the Tumong River before ice melted to unleash the body-swallowing torrent below. This was a path she hadn't embraced until now, a path I couldn't join her on. She'd have a better chance of marrying across the border without bringing a son. 2 strong arms for chores, no small mouth to feed. Be careful, Oma, I said. She held me to her chest. I breathed in the soot and oil in her rope-tied hair. We walked away from each other, I toward the quiet gray building in the distance and she to a greater unknown. It was almost dusk. The sun softened its colors in haste. I should be just in time for dinner, unlike her. I pressed my arms tight along my sides so as not to look back. Oma taught me to only march forward. The teachers were congregating children into lines before the big steamy pots. Dinner was the same as before, once a day, every day. A bowl of cornstarch porridge with a single kernel of corn inside. We secretly eyed each other's bowls, measuring. Pak Mi-kyung's porridge looked thinner than mine. The teacher must have scooped from the top before the pot was stirred well. Li Man-gup's bowl was filled to the rim. He could outrun me if the food truck came today. The porridge was not sweet, not salty, not bitter, save a sour aftertaste for those with acidic stomachs. The precious blandness, our bellies turned into energy, one more round of jump rope on the playground, one more storybook read with our backs hunched. The porridge was a check mark for another day alive. We were all grateful. Our country was taking care of us in times when our family and land failed too. The day was cold. Early spring wind gently swayed the steam rising from the bowls in children's hands, our scrawny bodies scattered around. I tucked my jacket into cotton padded pants, which grew too big for me this year, sat by my usual corner on the dusty ground, and cradled my porridge against the chill. Kang-soo, welcome back! A girl's voice announced herself. It was Yun-na-li, my oldest friend in the orphanage. Duna, it's good to see you again, healthy and well, I said, standing up and tilting my head to bow, my hands protecting the bowl's balance. Nali resembled even more of a chopstick than the last time I saw her, taller and thinner. The army green jacket and pants fitted around her limbs like whole potato sacks. She was 14, 2 years older than me, so I called her Duna, and she called me by my name. Her Uma also dropped her off at the orphanage, but it's been 4 years since she last came back. Did you find your kernel? Not yet. I rubbed my eyes, dipped my index finger into the hot turbot soup, and dug around the bottom. Felt it, I said. Wait. Here. Whoa. What I hooked in the crib of my finger toward the rim of my bowl was not 1, but 2 kernels, thick and plump in the canary-colored liquid. 대박! If someone finds 2 kernels on their first day, it's bound to happen again in the near future. Duna leapt up, repeating the orphanage tale, almost spilling her porridge. It is known. A whole extra kernel. Again. A sense of vertigo overtook me. I so rarely had an abundance to chew on, the sensation only persisted in my imagination. My gaze emptied. My teeth grounded, accidentally biting on my tongue. I flinched from myself, swallowed the iron taste in my mouth. Duna, your turn. Nuna eagerly plugged her finger in, first fast, then slow, tracing the bottom, holding wave after wave of slurry against the bowl's shore. Then she lowered her head and took her finger out, sucking on it. There was no kernel. In the same orphanage tale, a missed kernel was a death omen, a sign of abandonment from the great leader himself. It was known. We sat for a while, avoiding each other's gaze, the starch drying and draining the heat from our fingertips. Here, have one of mine, I said, breaking the silence. I gathered onto my palm the two kernels, which gleamed like tiny gold nuggets in the streaks of dusk. That's not funny, she said, chuckling. One can't give away his good luck. I have too much good luck. You have too little. Both are unfair. If we shared, we'd each have a normal luck day, I said. I'll even let you choose. I swayed my palm luringly. Nuna grabbed the smaller piece timidly. We put our respective nuggets in our mouths and chewed, savoring the bursts of sweet juice and the crunch of their core. Duna smiled, her teeth tiny, crooked, stained. Two of her side teeth were missing from the time we tried to crunch on pork leg bones that we found over the riverbank. I missed her, the two of us against the world. I knew Nuna missed me too, even though she wouldn't have wished to see me back in the orphanage. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, and we're going to see another part of the story. So the two kids, they often go into town because in the orphanage, the food is not enough. They only have one bowl of porridge a day. So some kids would steal and some kids would do other things, but these two decided to just like wait around and see if anyone would have spare food, and they were just given to them voluntarily. And they believed that if people have spare, they will offer. If they don't offer, it's because they have not enough for the next day. So we're gonna start on the streets next. Kansu, Nuna murmured as she doodled. The day was long, and noon was burning our backs. To save energy, we passed time squatting by the curb, drawing on dirt with a twig, talking only occasionally. Next to sketches of Nuleongi puppies and Dokso Pimpimban, she wrote the characters of my name. River water? Yeah, like this. I scooched over and scratched the hanja above her writing. A current that keeps on running. A strong name for a boy. Thanks. And between you and me, Oma didn't just name me after any river. Oh, which one? Taedong? Okan? Tumon. I was born in a small village near Namyang. Duna nodded. We shared a look of understanding and lowered our voices. The river of Tumon was the border that separates our country from a mythical land of prosperity, built upon whispers of those who knew relatives that survived the crossing. In the wintry nights, when the house sat pitch black in power outage and we had no candle to burn, Oma told me tales about this land across Tumon, where people were so rich they could eat a bowl of fresh rice topped with a hot fried egg and a dash of soy sauce 3 meals a day if they wished. It was unfathomable. Your Oma named you after the border? Duna whispered. Oma said when I was 1 month old, she thought about putting me in a basket and let Tumon drift me away. I whispered back. What for? So I could be washed up on the side of a shore, imagine, my basket rocking against a squatting laundry woman's basin or a fisherman's boat. I would be saved. But she couldn't do it. Couldn't bear losing me to the odds. She named me after the current instead, so if I grow big enough to swim or round up on it, I can cross it myself. Nuna stuck her tongue out. Aigu, your Oma has big guts. If anyone else asks, I'm just a river that keeps on running. I winked, my voice back to normal. And how do you write your name in Hanja, Nuna? I don't. It's Korean. Nari is Nari. The flower? Uma's favorite. She said Nali is kind and empathetic, and that makes it. Nuna swung her arms wide open and high. The most beautiful flower of them all. Nali is the most beautiful flower of them all. I swung open my arms, too, shouting toward the street. Nuna put her hand over her mouth in haste and looked left and right. No one was on the street to hear us. We both hunched over in a bout of laughter. So have you ever seen a Nali flower before? I asked. Oma told me I saw it once when I was little for my Helmini's funeral, but I don't remember anymore. Not even what color it was? White? I don't remember, but I only remember that it smelled like fresh snow. Luna didn't smell like fresh snow. She was a bit stinky. We were all a bit stinky. Oh, you know what? Luna said. What? When Oma comes back for me, I will beg her to take you away for one day. We will pack some kimchi. Oma makes the best kimchi. And look for Nali in the river. Does Nali grow in the river? What if it does? What if it doesn't? We'll look everywhere. In the mountains, the grassland, along the riverbank, we'll make a boat. Then when my Oma comes back, I'll beg her to take you to our village for a day. In the back of our house is the most beautiful flower field. There must be Nali there. I will bet my porridge on it. I must have run past Nali all my life without knowing it's your name. If there really is Nali there, I will braid you a flower crown as a thank you for the kernel. For that big of a mission, we'd have to eat at least 2 big bowls of snow-white rice. I bet you can. I bet you can eat like a bull. Nuna laughed. I hope our Omas come back soon. It's almost summer again. What if Nali only blooms in the spring? At these words, we were stuck. What if? Neither of us knew when Nali bloomed. We kicked our drawings back into dirt and talked little for the rest of the day. Instead, we watched factory workers and military patrols pass by with bellies fuller than ours. Last little piece. So things got a little bit worse. They still don't have food, and Nali is really sick. So what happened was that only Council had been going out on the street to find food, and he's been supplying her. But one day they heard a rumor that there is a food truck visiting in a week. So all they needed to make it is being alive for another week, and then they can keep on living with the food from the food truck. So Nali felt like that day she felt okay. So they actually went into the town together. The air was stuffy, like the inside of a brick factory. The morning sun, still climbing, rallied the cicadas on poplar trees to screech and screech like inconsolable children. It took us twice as long to reach halfway. We rested by an abandoned stone mill. Nuna felt dizzy and needed a break. Her back was hunched like a ladle, and the breaths were weak and rapid, as if from a leaking bellow. Maybe we should go back, I said, worried. Nuna's face had an eerie shine of yellow paper. No, Nuna said. I have a feeling we will have good luck today. Okay, I said, but let me carry you. I knelt down for Nuna to crawl on my back. She was light as a jacket. Her bones jutted against mine. We marched forward, past the wild grass field, single-story houses, white government buildings, and cotton factory. We're almost there, I said, panting. She mumbled, dozing off. I could see the ivory signboard of the grocery store in the distance. The street was empty today, and we passed by no one. Then I was standing in front of the store with Nuna on my back. On the window hung a messily written piece of cardboard that read, Nuna, I murmured. She raised her heavy head. I pressed my face against the store glass, and Nuna did the same over my shoulders. The shelves were empty. No sweet potato noodles, no candy, not a trace of what they once hosted. We looked back at the sign as the realization sank in. I helped Nuna sit down by the curb while I thought about where to go next. There wouldn't be many people that came by here without the promise of food, not to mention the chance of them having anything for us. Should we try the block where the cobbler was? or the one with the newspaper stand? Yadala! We looked up, startled. The middle-aged ajashi with gray uniform waved from afar, walking toward us with a roll of newspaper in hand. Ajashi! Good morning. Have you eaten today? I stood up to bow. I was hoping you two would be here. A relative visited from the capital, he announced as he raised his arm. Yadala! Catch! From about 10 steps away, he threw the roll of newspaper at us. I hurried over and caught it before it fell. My hands took in its weight and began trembling. Ajashi stood in the middle of the empty road, watching us with a smile. I bowed again, rushing back to Nuna, and we opened the roll with 4 jittery hands. Whoa! Our heads bumped together. An intoxicating aroma of sesame, a smell so strong the air became too thick to breathe, slattered our noses. Nestled in the blurry newspaper ink was a whole roll of kimbap. The softened seaweed paper shined. Inside the roll wrapped vibrant purple rice, yellow radish pickles, and boiled green spinach. Ajashi, 감사합니다. But this is too much. Is this just all for us? Thank our great leader instead. He loves you and wishes you well, Ajashi said. 잘 먹어. 건강하게 지내? Without giving us a chance to refuse. He turned around and walked back the way he came, humming a triumphant battle song. I rushed to my feet and bowed deeply toward Ajashi. I stayed bowing until Ajashi disappeared at the end of the street and a drop of sweat wetted the tip of my rubber shoe. When I sat beside Nuna again, she was still frozen in disbelief. We stared at the kimbap, at each other, swallowing squirts of saliva down our dry throats. Tuna, there's a fly on your eyelid. Oh. Duna lifted her arm to wave it away, her cheeks flushed in feverish excitement. Kansua, have you ever seen this many colors in a kimbap? It will take us days to finish it, I said. Oh, it would go so well with kimchi. The roll was pre-cut. I picked up the messy end piece with overflown filling and lifted to the side of Tuna's mouth, her eyes following my hand as I did so. Tuna, ah. By instinct, Tuna opened her mouth. Then she hesitated. Anya, I'm not so hungry. You have it first. I hesitated too, swallowing more saliva, then pressed the piece onto her mouth. Naughty child, finish your food. You know how hard farmers work, from seed to harvest? I faked a grown-up's voice. It made her laugh. Duna took a small bite and caught the rest of the piece with her palm. I watched her chew, slowly as I lapped in the whiff of the sea on my fingers. When she swallowed, I picked up the other end piece and gorged it down whole. To this day, I don't remember what it tastes like, only that it almost choked me as I cried, trying to swallow. As soon as it sank down the food pipe, my belly clenched, churning the foreign, solid object. Your face is the color of a pig liver, Nuna laughed. Eat slowly, Li Kangsu. Nuna held the rest of her end piece as she watched me catch my breath, but she didn't have more. What's wrong, Nuna? I asked, wiping my tears away. Nothing. I don't have an appetite. I'm too thirsty to eat. I'll fetch you some water. No, she answered, waving away flies that perched below her nose. Actually, yes. We should head back for some water. It's still early. We can pass by the creek if you like. I want to go back to the orphanage now. A film of guilt climbed over her face. Kansua, say Nuna want to share the kimbap with the other children. Would you be mad? I was afraid she would have suggested. Nuna, amdeo. Ajashi give it to us. Kansua, Duna is so sorry to ask this of you. It's just there are so many more days, bad, to come than good ones. This kimbap can save more lives than ours. I stared at the kimbap again. How many grains of rice were in there? How many hungry mouths were at home? Beside me, Duna's chest swelled and shrank as the cicada screeched. I looked at Duna. Her eyes welled up with so much light, and I hadn't seen hope in her in so long. I couldn't bear to be the one to let her down, even if the aftermath would lead us back to our starvation. I lowered my head, and Nuna's expression relaxed. When do you want to go back? I asked. In a bit, she said. More flies gathered, crashing their bodies against ours, looming over the kimbap like evil American spies did in comic books. I tried to wave away as many as I could. Duna let them land on her body, but held a tight grip to protect the bitten piece of kimbap in her palm. I'm so tired, Nuna said. Me too, I said. We sat as long as we could, like we always did. Only this time, we were holding on to something so precious, it seemed to have become the meaning of our lives. Kansu, Nuna said, would you go back first? I want to stay a little longer. What for? After she said people from the capital were visiting, I was thinking, what if the food truck comes by today? One of us should stick around just in case. What about your water? After you drop off the kimbap, you will come back for me, won't you? Of course, I said, but only if you finish your food before I'm back. I promise, Luna smiled, patting her closed palm with the other hand. Okay, I'll come back soon, and we'll both make it to dinner. I got up to my feet, carefully wrapping the kimbap back into a tight roll. The sun climbed higher still, right above our hair swirls. As I turned to face the street, I heard a sloppy noise, and a faint stench stretched from behind me. Luna, gross! Did you fart? I giggled, walking away. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, that was amazing. So we do have some time still to entertain questions that you as the audience might have, or comments as well, and compliments are welcome. Would anyone like to get us started, Sudan? It looks like you might be ready to start us off. Would you mind? And please introduce yourself. So I don't think Winniebell has met you yet. Have you met? No, okay.
Loud enough? I can be very loud because you were recording. Are you recording? Oh, okay. All right. I'm not used to the microphone. So thank you so much. I really like your first poem. It doesn't mean I don't like the rest of the poem, but the way you read and also performance in a way. So how do you call the way you read the poem? Is it more like a performative, that kind of way? And yeah, so would you say a little bit about that? And then the last one, the novel, really, I'm so touched, and I make me feel like, make me appreciate more about what we have here at Smith. Sometimes we have so much food. And so really, I just feel like, we really have to appreciate what we have here, especially when it comes to food. So that's two things I would like to say. So, but anyway, it's just so touching, and I really enjoy listen to your reading. But I would like to know a little bit about your first performance. I call it performance. I don't know how you call it, but I call it performance anyway. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for your question. I'm going to see you tomorrow at lunch. Oh, yes. Okay. This is the first time I did performance poetry. So like I would call it performance poetry or spoken word. I did a little bit in undergrad, but different era. And this one I actually asked for a friend at Wisconsin Madison to help me choreograph it, and their name is Dia Abbas, and they're actually the Grand Slam champion. And I choreographed it at first by myself, and then Dia said, no, don't do this, don't do that, and do this instead. And actually one of the moves was also from my husband. So I tried to practice a lot because I was so nervous. Shouldn't say this one because it's recorded. I cried myself 3 times trying to rehearse because I was so nervous. And I teach a class inside a facility in Madison, so I actually practice it on my students first, and like because we share poems that we write every week. So I performed it in front of them for the first time, and I had diarrhea after I came back home. The first time after we choreographed the piece, and Dia's like, okay, I'm gonna hold the camera. This is not a performance. This is just so that you know, like record a video for yourself so you remember the choreography. And I did that. And then after they left, I went to the bathroom and I didn't leave for half an hour. And then when Dia came back for a second rehearsal, that also happened after. So I thought like that was gonna be my streak for the rest of my life. But right now I feel fine. So I think that is broken, and this is something I would like to do. And I feel like, I chose poetry at first after I came here without a major for undergrad in 2014, and English is the thing I sucked at the least. I thought I was like, oh, I'll get an English major and go back home and teach English, but then one of the requirement was I had to take a creative writing class for my major. And it was the first time I felt like I had a voice because, in most of my education, I was taught to appreciate the words of better men, and never thought that I had a voice that mattered. And when I realized that I could tell my own story and the story of my beloveds, I can't stop. And right now I feel like I can take that further and leap off the page and show it in person with my body, how an embodied language look like, and add more context on top of that. Yeah. Thank you for your question. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah. I also practice on my husband a lot. He had to watch me rehearse. I didn't feel nervous when he was there.
Somebody else have a question? Comment? I have a question, actually. So I want to thank you again, Winniebell. Everything that you read was really very, very powerful, moving, enthralling. I think everybody in the room, I know I was just couldn't keep my eyes off of you because of how captivating the performance, the embodiment, but also the substance of both the poems and the prose that you read. There's so much that you gave us today. It's hard to pin down one thing, but I think I'll start my question and give folks some time to maybe generate their question. One of the things that you said was that poetry can be so much about trauma, and it reminded me of one of the first poems that I ever heard, which was also in college, in a Latina women writers class by a Chicana poet named Lorna Di Cervantes. And it was a poem called, I actually went and looked it up because today I got an email from the Mellon Foundation in honor of National Poetry Month, where the question of the foundation was, which poem changed your life? Right? And for me, it was this poem, and it's called Poem for the Young White Man Who Asked Me How I, an educated, well-read person, could believe in the war between the races. Right? It is a great title. And it's a long poem, I'm not going to read it, but there's this line where she says, I wish that I could read Russian short stories and weep and write poems about love full of nothing but contented childlike syllables. In her land, there are no boundaries, no hunger, no complicated famine or greed. I am not a revolutionary. I don't even like political poems. Do you think I can believe in a war between the races? I can deny it. I can forget about it when I'm safe, living on my own continent of harmony and home. But I am not there. I believe in revolution because everywhere the crosses are burning. Sharp shooting goose-steppers on every corner. There are snipers in the schools. I know you don't believe this. You think this is nothing but faddish exaggeration, but they are not shooting at you. So I thought about that poem and that line in particular when you said that line about poetry can be so much about trauma, and the narrating of it, though, is also about kind of not only archiving and honoring that trauma, but in some ways transforming it. So I wanted to hear more from you about that.
Okay, I have a lot of thoughts in my head. I have ADHD, so I'm trying to quiet them down and choose one of them. I've been collecting in a Google Doc a lot of poems about flowers, mostly from people of color. And I realized that flowers, writing about flowers in poetry for people of color is almost always a political thing. Who gets to have the agency to write about flowers and take a walk in the forest and see two rows in front of them and see nothing more other than I can't choose wrong? Who can write about flowers and not think about the earth underneath that was not their home? Who can just take a look at the flowers and pick it up and think that they own the flower, and who can look at the flowers and think that I don't have to worry about not seeing a flower tomorrow because everything's bombed to the ground. That is one of the thoughts that I have, and it's not very fleshed out yet, but I see poems by South Korean writers. A lot of Black people write about this. A lot of Palestinian writers write about this. Yeah. And a lot of what I do, I think, is I turn to poetry because I otherwise have no language that can speak of this language of smoke, and that is a line by Paul Tran, actually, in which that I can put so many complicated transnational and intersectional things together in one language and call it what it is and say that this is exactly what I mean. And that poem, it reminds me of Watson Shire's poem Home. Yeah, and poets are always the first ones in the literary world to get arrested, and for good reasons. We are the potential energy, as Solmaz Sharif says, for the legislatures, so that we yell at them so that they do things and change the world. So Solmaz thinks that we are not like change makers, but we are the ones that can push the change to happen. And that is something that I see in the role of my poems too. And at least somewhere I aspire to be is that I don't want my poem to stay on the page. I don't want them to be talks. I want to one day walk my words, and I want to one day be in a position where I can not only teach others to walk their words too, but also be there at the front line with them. And I hope I get there one day.
Has anyone had a chance to formulate a question, or should I ask the next one I have? Still thinking? Okay. It's interesting that you talked about going from poetry to prose. Last semester's winner won for prose, and Maryam Al-Amjadi, who is an Iranian writer in exile at the moment. And she had the opposite experience. She was a poet, very much inspired by the Iranian tradition of poetry, and poetry as politics and protest, as well as aesthetically pleasing, right? And she was transitioning to prose as well. And her winning piece was the first prose piece that she'd sent out to a contest, and it won. We thought it was fabulous. So could you say a little bit to us about for you personally, the relationship between poetry and prose? Because to my ear, which again is not an expert ear, but I could hear so much of the poetic cadence and voice in your prose. But could you say a little bit about that?
Thank you for the question. I first turned to poetry because I thought, I don't speak English as a first language. How do I create art in a language when it's not my first tongue? And I thought poetry is the shortest form. so that I can find the least fault in it, because I suffer from chronic perfectionism. And I thought, okay, if it is just a few lines with 35 tries, I can get it to be perfect. But if it is a prose piece, it's so long, and I get lost, and I get bogged down to revising one sentence over and over. And when I became a survivor around 2018, 2019, I turned to poetry as a way to survive. It gives me a place where I can put, because the police wasn't going to do anything, I can do something for myself and document this is exactly what happened. And then over time, when I healed more, I realized that I don't have to give a shit. In a way that's like, I was limiting myself to, I have to write about exactly what happened on the page. And I felt so lost and I felt so helpless. But then with the fictional, Kim Adonisio said, all poets lie. And when I lie, I can write them to be so small. As materially, they might be bigger than I was, but in spirit, they were so small. And if I can lie in my poetry, I can capture their emotional truth, which was that they were the weak ones, which was that, I had so much in front of me that I did not see. So I turned to poetry to transform my experiences so that others might feel it too. But to be honest, I was also turning to poetry because I was so afraid, because the men who hurt me once were and might still be powerful. That, I have a lot of things to think of what to put on the page. And I was so hurt by the experience, I have PTSD, that I could only let myself see snippets of the moments of what happened before I turned my mind off. So poetry gives you the room to write one scene or one flash of memory and capture that, but no more. Once I'm healed enough, I can see all the flashes and all the dots that I did in poetry. And I have so many of them that they stare at me in the face and I cannot look away. And I can look at it in the face and say that this is what happened and this is how I feel about it now. And this is where I get to move on. And that's where the prose come in. It's connecting the dots. It's more than scenes. It's forming narratives and it's transforming narratives. And, I'm making this transition because I'm ready. Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think the last question I'll ask you, which is, I think, related to what you just said, is about the prize-winning poem, because I see a lot of parallels, right, in Ba's recipe for COVID and the contrapuntal form that you use there, and what you were just saying, right, about these, in sociology and anthropology, we call them indexicals, right? There's what we say and there's what we mean. And to grasp both of those, you have to have a kind of a sensitivity and multiple ways of knowing, right? And like insight that is not necessarily accessible to everyone. And I see that as a thread in everything that you read today, that there was the immediately accessible, and then there's the stuff that blossoms and comes to you later, like Ba's recipe for COVID. So I think I'd like to close there with some reflections from you about that poem and, final thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Honestly, that was such a weird little poem that I did. I never thought that it would win a prize. But yeah, and really, what can I say about it? My Ba doesn't talk, so he's this grumpy old man who's like, I don't even know how to. I can't. If he watches this, he might. But he doesn't talk a lot, and he told me like one story of like when he was 2 years old. His parents were working the field, and there's nobody to take care of him, so they chained him to a tree, and chained a dog to a tree so the dog could watch over the baby. And he would just like sit down and play with the dog and play with the dirt all day long. And that's how he lived his life, you know, without anybody to talk to, in, you know, when he was very young. And I feel like, I don't know, like our expectation for men is that, you know, they don't talk but do things. So he would never have said what I wrote on there. It would be too emotional for him. He would send me a recipe, but he would have never said on the other side. So it was not only me imagining what he would say if there is no censorship, but also what he would say if there's no self-censorship. If he were able to access his emotions, how maybe he would express love through verbal language, because his love language is never really through the verbal. Yeah. A few days ago, I think like he called me and we talked on the phone for an hour and we hung up, and he was talking about his business and like all his things. Like he went to a restaurant and was drinking their wine by himself. And then after, like, I think 2 days after, my mom called me and said, did your ba call you for your birthday? I said, that was for my birthday? He did not say happy birthday. He did not say I love you. He did not say nothing of that. He was just talking about his business. But for him, that was like a big leap of step because he felt like he called first and it wasn't me reaching out. So, you know, there's a, yeah, I think like, you know, the form of the poem on the page is also like wordy and overwhelming, and that might be an aspiration of where I hope my dad would get to one day. Say more.
That's a lovely place to end. Thank you so much. And thank you all for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Congratulations again, Winniebell.